Nice to be here again in Manhattan at La Casa. Today we will emphasize the importance of your skin to your health, not the importance of your health to your skin. Most people treat the skin as nothing more than a shell, instead of realizing that the skin is actually a vital organ, no less important than your kidneys, the liver, and other organs that are manufacturing important products that our body utilizes. So if you want to have a healthy body, you must have a healthy skin. And that's something most people don't talk about. You need to treat your skin in a certain way, keep it healthy, maintain its vitality, in order for the skin to do for you what it should. Now, most people don't realize that the skin is an organ that manufactures crucial products that your body needs every day, every second. Products that are crucial for immune function, crucial for prevention of cancer and autoimmune disease, nutrients that are crucial for prevention of obesity. If you want to lower your weight, you need to have a healthy skin. And you need to treat the skin right to allow this. And cardiovascular disease, respiratory disorders, diabetes, and even mood. So your skin is in charge of your mood, believe it or not. And not because when you look at the mirror you're becoming really upset. That's one reason that the skin could be affecting your mood adversely, but in other ways that are biochemical. The skin protects you from having neurological disorders and psychiatric disorders. But you need to give the skin what it needs to do that. So how does the skin provide you with all these important nutrients? Those important products? You have to give it the building blocks that will allow it to manufacture all of them. And those building blocks are not just food, nutrients, or supplements. The building blocks are things that came from nature. The principles of nature must not be forgotten. Are we creatures that came from nature? Or are we creatures that were invented by humans? Could we trust a person who tells us to forget about nature and come into a clinic instead of discerning and thinking, wait a minute, we came from nature, we are creatures whose physiology and biochemistry were created by the environment that we came into, and therefore we must listen to that physiology and be very suspicious when someone tells us to do things that contradict that reality. For example, most people are being told on a regular basis to stay out of the sun because of the damage that it can cause them. Is that a natural statement? Are the sun not preceding our existence? We came here after the sun did, which means our physiology has adapted to an environment where there is sun in our life. So if someone tells you to stay out of the sun, you must be suspicious because it doesn't sound like a natural principle. We need to adhere to natural principles in order to somehow support our physiology. So if you stay out of the sun, you're not giving the skin, which is our biggest organ, and that is the one organ that comes in touch with the sun more than any other organ in our body, then obviously something might be missing because our environment is now deficient in an important, crucial thing. Just like when you don't eat fresh fruits and vegetables, you become deficient in certain antioxidants, for example, vitamin C. Then you might say, I need to take vitamin C supplement to compensate. So that adheres to a natural principle. If you are replacing something you should have had anyway, well, it's better to eat whole fruits and vegetables, right, to get your vitamin C. But let's admit that most people don't get enough today, so they get vitamin C. But would it be better if they got not just vitamin C, but all the rest of the nutrients that come with the vitamin C at the same time? The same is true with other things we get from nature. If we are supposed to be obtaining sun exposure, if our skin is supposed to be continuously caressed by the sun's rays, then we should be getting more than one nutrient that is manufactured in the skin. You all heard of vitamin D, right? It became such an important vitamin that some people say it was the previous decade was the decade of vitamin D. But now we are coming upon a new decade that says, hold on for a second. Vitamin D, with all of its importance, cannot replace the sun. The skin manufactures huge amounts of vitamin D when we are exposed to the sun. In fact, if you are a white person who's fairly young and capable, you will be making anywhere between 40 and 50,000 IU of vitamin D in 20 to 30 minutes. And if you are darker, if you are black, for example, you might just make 10 to 20 or 25,000 IU in 20 to 30 minutes. That's still a fairly high dose, much more than any supplement can provide, which means that we're supposed to be getting a much bigger amount of vitamin D than what we can get in supplements and even in food. Food, in its best vitamin D form, in its richest form, cannot give us 1/10 of the amount we can obtain from the sun. And it's much better for our health to get vitamin D from the sun than it is to get from supplements or from food. Although if you are deficient, of course you would need supplements and they would need to be absorbable. Not all vitamin D supplements are highly absorbable. But if you think that by taking vitamin D you are replacing the sun, you are incorrect. You need to think again. Vitamin D does not replace the sun, because our skin manufactures hundreds upon hundreds of photoproducts as a result of being exposed to solar radiation. This is why I call our exposure to sun rays our ability to obtain photonutrients from the sun. The sun is the source of nutrients. And why are they nutrients? Because just like vitamins and other elements we get from food, photonutrients metabolize in our skin and in other parts of the body to create products. We call those photoproducts because they are the results of manufacturing processes in the body which occur after we have been exposed to the photonutrients. So photonutrients from the sun are activating our skin mostly to create hundreds of photoproducts. This is exactly the same as what happens when we eat, when we take supplements. So therefore, you cannot live a healthy life while you are deficient in hundreds of photonutrients, any more than you can be healthy being deficient of nutrients from food. However, we've been given a message again and again to stay out of the sun. How can we have enough nutrients by just taking vitamin D? Can that replace all those hundreds of nutrients? No. So in reality, everybody here in Manhattan and in the area, and everybody who lives north of the 35th parallel, for several months in the winter, up to 6 or 7 months as we go north, is deficient in phytonutrients. And we are all deficient. How could we expect health when we are not manufacturing in our skin not just vitamin D with all of its great benefit, but also nitric oxide, different types of endorphins, different types of cytokines, which are important for immune function, different types of leukotrienes, and other important messengers of the immune system. So the skin becomes a very important organ that makes nutrients for us, that makes products as a result of sun exposure, which makes perfect sense because our body is supposed to be highly efficient. So efficient that from every food we eat, we isolate all those nutrients and learn how to absorb them and repackage them and metabolize new products out of them in a highly efficient way. Could we possibly have the biggest organ of our body do nothing for us except for be a shell, a pretty shell if we're lucky? Obviously that would be highly inefficient. The largest organ to be uselessly covering our body? No. If we had to carry heavy skin around us without any nutrients, we would obviously not survive for long by comparison to those of us who would actually enjoy a productive skin. And that's the typical development in nature, is the more efficient creatures survive. The less efficient ones don't have much of a chance to survive. They cannot compete. As a result, in order to still be here today, we had no choice but to become efficient. And we are the product of many, many generations of efficiency. That's why our skin is so crucial as a vital, productive organ, making thousands of nutrients that we still don't know about, but hundreds that we already know about. For example, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is very important as a nutrient, but most people are deficient in it because they're not in the sun. Now you could take supplements like arginine to increase your nitric oxide production, but that will not be a large amount, just a tiny amount and only for a short amount of time. Plus it will come with a negative impact of taking in a lot of arginine. It's not all good. It's also bad for some aspects of the immune system, and it has too many nitrogen residues. So it's better if we make nitric oxide in the way that nature intended, which is by being in the sun. When you are exposed to UVA, not UVB, but UVA, which means you can even be exposed to it through the window during the day, you create nitric oxide in your skin and it's released into your blood. Now you have all those cardiovascular benefits, and it helps with sexual capabilities, it helps with various immune factors, it's an anti-inflammatory. But if you have too much of it, you get free radical damage. Nitric oxide becomes peroxynitrite, which is a very potent free radical that can cause damage. Fortunately for us, in nature you don't just get exposed to UVA. You also get exposed to full spectrum, and other products from the sun are forcing us to make anti-inflammatory agents, antioxidant agents inside the skin, which is now protected from the excessive amount of nitric oxide. So under the sun, we can be balanced. If we just increase nitric oxide without the other components of solar radiation, we end up developing too much free radical damage, too much inflammation after excessive amount of time of being in the sun, or excessive amount of time of taking those products. So every time we are in the sun for 25 to 30 minutes, we actually benefit from anti-inflammatory activities, anti-proliferative activities, anti-cancer activities, and we even repair the DNA in the skin. In the first 25 to 30 minutes of sun exposure, your skin becomes more protected against all types of skin cancer. But if you stay in the sun much longer, and you don't have enough antioxidants coming from your diet, which mostly come from plants, from greens, from colorful vegetables. If you don't have enough, then over time, beyond 30 minutes, you start having cumulative damage, which could have been avoided if you ate correctly and if you didn't focus your diet entirely on nutrient-poor but calorie-rich foods. And we all tend to want to have rich foods calorically because they're more satisfying. We want more fat, we want more protein, and we confuse the good feeling of satiety with health. It's not necessarily healthy. In nature, we would always live on the verge of discomfort, on the brink of starvation, and that would make us healthy. But today, it's so easily accessible, this rich caloric food, that we gravitate towards it again and again, and we don't get enough antioxidants. And that's one reason why we can continuously castigate the good sun and blame her for all the damage that she creates in our skin instead of taking responsibility and saying, well, it's our own diet, let's allow this to happen. It's been proven scientifically that people who are much richer in their antioxidant intake and are not destroying their foods excessively by cooking it, by adding all kind of chemicals to it and so on. I mean, if they don't process their food and if they eat them in the most natural, fresh form, they tend to be able to stay in the sun a lot longer and they have no skin damage. But let's assume that the sun does create some of the damage. It's only true if you stay in it too long and if you allow yourself to burn. And usually within 25 to 30 minutes of sun exposure, you will not burn. And you will feel good, and you would love it. And suddenly, with all that nitric oxide and all those other agents, you start feeling healthier mood too. Your depression goes away, your anxiety releases. So you get all those other benefits, and it's all thanks to your skin. So if we understand the skin to be so important, how could we neglect it by staying out of the sun? So if we stick together until the end of the lecture, I'll tell you what is a very good solution for people who live in the northern latitude, who don't get enough sun, and for people who live in southern latitude, who potentially could get enough sun, but are not getting it. Why? Because they either work indoors, or they are night shift workers, or they live in the big cities and they don't have an opportunity to go out in the sun, or they need privacy and modesty and they can't expose themselves in public without somebody calling the police to get most of your skin exposed to the sun as nature intended. And of course, pollution reduces sun exposure. Tall buildings, as you have here in Manhattan, you don't get enough sun as a result. There are many reasons, and let's not forget a very important reason for a lot of people. It's their tradition to dress up very modestly and cover up everything except for the neck up and a little bit of the hand. How can they ever get enough sun, even in the high noon during the summer? So the vast majority of people today are deficient in phytonutrients. and in so many of them that they cannot possibly enjoy good health. Even if they think they do, they don't realize how much better they will be. There have been studies about performance, athletic performance, strength, endurance, even that, muscle building. All those sports dramatically get enhanced when people are exposed in the sun, and not just from vitamin D. I'm talking significant changes in athletic performance. You know, running the 100-yard dash or the 100-meter dash, imagine going down from 9.5 seconds to 9 seconds. That sounds like a little bit, but it's huge, isn't it? Well, they did a study and they found that in students, in young student athletes in school age, they had almost half a second improvement in running faster when they were exposed to the sun, and as a result their vitamin D level went up. And that's a very important concept. When your vitamin D level is high and you're taking supplement, I cannot tell whether or not you are deficient in all the phytonutrients. How would I know? You masked the one way that I have to measure your sun exposure. By taking a lot of vitamin D, your level now increases, but it went up artificially from the supplement, not from the sun. So I don't know whether or not you have deficiency in all the other phytonutrients. That's why it's important to measure your vitamin D level when you are not on a supplement, and then if you are on one, to make sure you're not getting to a toxic level, which is very rare. If you're taking calcium as a supplement because of bone loss or because of fear of bone loss, you might cause damage, because the calcium can potentially sink into the soft tissue, calcify them, and make you harden, make you lose your flexibility. But that would happen mostly if your vitamin D level is low. It needs to be very high. Most people don't reach that level. About 60 to 70 or 60 to 80 nanogram per milliliter, which is a really good dose. Most people here can never reach that, even by taking supplements. But they can reach it easily if they spend time in the sun. So for me, vitamin D level that we measure in the blood is a surrogate endpoint. It's basically a representative of how much sun exposure you manage to get fixed, which is a good test to have, because it's telling us whether or not you are deficient in many of the phytonutrients that you should be getting. And if you are deficient, you will need the supplement, but it's only supplementing vitamin D. It is not replacing sun. So that's one thing I want to emphasize today, is in order to have healthy skin, and in order to allow your skin to keep your body healthy, you must get a lot of sun. And you might be already frustrated because, hey, we are now still in winter in Manhattan, and we are already towards the end of April, which is highly frustrating. This is the time where most people in Manhattan are moody and unhealthy, because they've been through an entire winter of increasing deficiency of solar exposure. Now is the worst time. Only when spring comes and the sun starts coming out, you can gradually build it up again. But now is when we are suffering the most, if we don't live in the tropical area. But nobody is telling you that. They just pop pills. They take more antidepressants, more anti-inflammatories and other drugs to increase their performance and their mood at a great price. They'll suffer from it in the future. So if the skin is so important, we need to keep it healthy, because only healthy skin will manufacture all these important phytonutrients, all those photoproducts when the skin is exposed. unhealthy skin makes less vitamin D as well, which is why elderly people are at higher risk of many diseases, because vitamin D level is so protective against 25 types of cancer and cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, mood disorders, psychiatric issues, sleep-wake cycle, and so on. All that is just vitamin D, one out of the many, many phytonutrients, photoproducts. So the skin has to be maintained in good shape, in good health. And we can measure the health of the skin by looking at the 3 different types of skin tissues. Right? So the stratum corneum, which is the part of the skin that comes in touch with the outside environment. That's the fatty, oily layer of the skin. And I've lectured about it many times, but I'll just give you a quick synopsis of that now. The fatty layer of the skin is important for many purposes. One of those purposes is to give building blocks for our skin to make vitamin D, because some of those fats are cholesterol based. So we need high amounts of cholesterol and cholesterol-like substances, lipids, in our outer layer of the skin, so that we can manufacture things from them in response to sun exposure. That's one purpose of that oily layer. Another is to keep all the water inside, to act as a barrier, so that we maintain the hydration of the skin and its youthfulness and its functionality. Skin that is hydrated is able to maintain living cells, and it's the living cells that do most of the manufacturing. How can you have a living cell when it's shriveled up, dry, and about to die? That's why old and shriveled up skin is manufacturing less of the photoproducts. So that's a very important function of the outer layer of the skin, the stratum corneum. And the worst thing we can do is destroy that oily, fatty layer. How do we destroy it? One, by taking showers too much and with soap. Regularly using soap is cutting through that oily layer and destroys it. So if you take showers, take them less frequently. We don't have to be obsessive about ablution, which is what people do nowadays. They have somehow internalized that false aphorism that cleanliness is godliness. That's not true. God never takes a shower, believe it or not. So, taking a shower is not godliness. It's not necessary in most cases. In nature, you would once in a while jump into a body of water and enjoy it, but you would never use soap. There would be no chlorine, no fluoride. You wouldn't be using hot water, which is even cutting harder into the skin. You would make it a very short exposure to the water if it's cold, and that would be it. But nowadays, I don't have to tell you how obsessed we are with soaps in our society. So that destroys that fatty layer and eliminates the ability of the skin to maintain its own hydration. Because when the fatty layer is diminished or destroyed, we are now losing a lot more water, vapor of water, through the skin. This is called transepidermal water loss. It is measurable. There is a test for it. Transepidermal water loss can be easily quantified, and there are normals, what we should be losing from the skin. But people who have compromised their skin on a regular basis, and even taking a shower right now with soap in hot water, will be instantly a cause for losing more water from our living skin, which is a deeper layer beyond the stratum corneum. What else can we do to destroy the stratum corneum or damage it? Scrubbing. People who scrub regularly or brush their skin all the time because they were told by the internet or by somebody in the natural hygiene movement from many years ago that brushing is good. Well, yes, it might be good for the lymphatics in some cases. Yes, it stimulates circulation, but there are other ways of doing it. In nature, I have never seen any animal, except for maybe one kangaroo, that continuously scrub their whole body. Even the kangaroo doesn't do it. I'm just checking if you're awake. Kangaroos don't do it. Okay, no animals in nature scrub their entire body. It just doesn't happen. Only humans believe other humans and decide to do something that comes not out of nature, but out of some book or somebody's idea of what's healthy and what's not. So if you want to get your lymphatics going, do some activity, walk, exercise, bounce, jump, play, be a child, roll on the hay, on the grass. That gets your lymphatics going. You can play rough with each other, right? Do this. Okay? That gets you going. All that is natural.
So we don't need exfoliation.
What is exfoliation? Do you see any animal do that in nature? Exfoliation means you are losing your stratum corneum, and therefore you are compromising your natural skin's health and integrity. You don't need to exfoliate. That is good for some professionals who sell you products for exfoliation. Just like some people will sell you soap. Yes, there are some natural soaps made from natural product, but they still are designed to completely eliminate the natural oil. Now, who lives in your natural oil? Your bacteria, your microbiome. Just like you have microbiota in the gut, you have very important and healthy microbiota in the skin. And we end up destroying them every time we take a shower with soap. And they are a great source and resource for more healthy microbes that enter in the gut through the mouth. So don't do something that will destroy your digestive system as well as your skin. Not necessary. Let's not fuss. Now, it takes time to do all those things that we somehow decided to do obsessively, compulsively, and we end up only causing ourselves damage instead of benefit. It's better to be lazy and do nothing than to do stuff that is harming you. So lazy people who don't take showers, actually have a better health sometimes than those who are obsessive about showering every day. When people are looking at each other, especially the guys, I told you, and the women are looking kind of, oh, wait a minute, I want him to take more showers, not less. So, all right, so reach an agreement that he can use very short showers sometimes and use a little bit of soap just in the armpits and the crotch. That's it. So, all right, that's it. That could be a good arrangement. Beyond that, you don't need to emphasize and exaggerate that cleanliness routine. What else can you do to your skin that might damage it?
You mentioned too much sun.
Too much sun? Yeah, but nowadays people don't get enough. I mean, how could you get too much sun during 7 months of the year? You're not getting any. So I wouldn't be worried about that. Plus, nature tells us when it's too much. When you feel the heat on your skin, you feel discomfort, you leave the sun, you go into the shade, or you put clothes on, or a hat, or a sunbrella. People don't have to be told the obvious. Why is it that the doctors always tell you not to have too much? But they never tell you to have enough. As if it's necessary to have this kind of advice when people's skin tells them to get out of the sun. What people will not know when to get out of the sun? Only those who have succumbed to the propaganda of the sun protection creams. Only when you have an SPF product on your body, you fail to recognize when you are too much in the sun. So avoid sunscreens completely, and you will always know when you are in the sun too much. You will never need any doctor to tell you it's time for you to get out, because you will feel it on your own, and you will trust your own sense of your perception of discomfort in your skin. It's kind of ridiculous that we hire people and pay them a lot of money just to tell us something that our skin will tell us for free. But they are the people who sell us the SPF products. So now they can give you advice too, because they eliminate your own warning sign by giving you SPF products. Now you are failing to get the UVB, which is the one tiny component of the solar spectrum that is giving us that important warning. So now you stay in the sun so much longer, and you are exposed to many aspects of the sun that in excess can cause damage. But it would never happen in nature. It would never happen if you didn't buy those SPF creams. So you should never buy them. You should simply trust your own skin to tell you, I've had enough. There's no reason to ever burn in the skin if you, under the sun, if you allow yourself to listen to your skin. But even if you burn a little bit here and there, you're still far, far healthier for it than those who avoid the sun for fear of burning. Why? Because many studies have shown that for every person that might be dying as a result of a disease that the sun could have contributed to, there are 325 people approximately who die as a result of insufficient sun exposure. So if you are a doctor, what advice should you be giving people? To go in the sun to save the 325 people instead of to go out of the sun to save 1%. It's ridiculous that this is the advice you're getting, because thanks to the sun, we make so many potent products that save our lives. Can you hear the Russian music down below? They're having a party in the restaurant underneath us. So people always find weird questions. Like, what about children? Well, children are not from nature, only adults are. Children are a different story. They're not little people. They're some kind of a foreign animal that suddenly become an adult at a certain age. So they should not be in the sun. Come on. Children also know when to get out of the sun. They know it naturally, so it was a ridiculous question. I'm sorry. Children know when they feel burning sensation. And when you put those SPF creams on them, you dramatically increase their risk of numerous cancers, of obesity, of cardiovascular disease, of mood and neurological and psychiatric issues, and many other conditions, because you are destroying their ability to manufacture 99.9% of all the vitamin D they should be making. Plus, all the other photo products are not going to be manufactured because they are missing numerous photonutrients in the entire solar spectrum as a result of this horrible cream. Plus, it has all those toxins in it that cause various modifications in their hormonal balance. Not just the thyroid, but especially the sex hormones. So you're turning boys into girls, and you also increase testosterone production and hair in girls, and create developmental disorders, and increase the risk of all those hormonally triggered cancers. So you should never, never do that. Children back in the 50s and 40s, and adults too, were in the sun all the time. Yes, they burned sometime, or, you shouldn't burn, but they burned anyway. You shouldn't eat cheese, but some people eat cheese anyway. They don't die from it, and there is no big advertisement about stay away from the cheese, even though cheese is far worse for you than being burnt in the sun. Well, but what about children? Should children also avoid cheese? That's the same kind of question. Why are we separating one part of humanity from another? That's why we need to think natural instead of thinking man-made ideas, man-made information brainwashes us to resist nature and to always find excuses. Wait a minute, I still need to have my cheese sometime. What? Doesn't it have probiotic or something good? Oh yeah, it has calcium. That's it. That's why I'm going to have my cheese. See, there's always a way for us to justify to ourselves our own behavior, which is not condoned by nature, and which results with various compromises to our health, especially with children, because that's when we are supposed to start right, start on the right foot, so that you can become a healthy adult. If you destroy children, what is going to happen to them when they grow up to become adults? We don't have to delve into that. So, we destroy our skin also by doing what?
Makeup?
Makeup, all right. You do that a lot as an actor. Okay, but you look really good in that makeup. So, however, what do people do even if they're not actors and they're not women who love makeup, and they do it to their entire body? They smother themselves with oil. A lot of people think, oh, it's so good. I'm using edible oil, so it must be, and it's organic, and it's cold pressed. And if I can put it in my mouth, I should be able to put it on my skin, right? No, they say the opposite. If I can eat it, I can put it on the skin. But it's actually not the case. Just because you can eat it and metabolize it doesn't mean your skin can eat it and metabolize it. When you put oil on your skin, like coconut oil or olive oil, or even if they're good edible oils, they should not be put on your skin because they interrupt the natural oily layer. They dilute it, they change its composition, they destroy the natural pH of the skin, and they make your microbiota, the healthy microbes, cease to thrive. You destroy your skin's ability to act as a healthy barrier. If your skin is not a healthy barrier, thanks to its oily layers, then other oily layers in the body could suffer too. And that's how we learn from the skin about internal health. People who suffer excessive transepidermal water loss because of insufficient fatty layer on the stratum corneum on the surface of the skin will also have problems in their cell membranes, which are always made of fat, in their brain, which is made, a lot of it is made of fat, and also the blood-brain barrier. Many areas in our body that depend on oily separation between watery environment will also suffer. And of course, having in our diet a lot of food containing rancid fat, which is very, very common today. Even the healthiest eaters today eat rancid fat almost every day because they buy packaged food with canola, or they buy healthy, organic, plant-based food that contain some other kind of oil that's being exposed to a lot of heat. It's not going to be easy nowadays. Even to eat raw nuts and seeds that have been on the shelf for who knows how many months, exposed to heat, light, and oxygen, they are going to become rancid, and people fail to get it in large bulk amounts, straight from the refrigerator, and keep it in the freezer for a while longer until it's actually being eaten, so that you can protect it from going rancid. So every time you buy packaged food, look at the ingredients. You will find some kind of an oil, whether it's soybean oil, or corn oil, or safflower, or sunflower, or others, nut oils, they will go rancid. Flax oil especially, chia oil. They will not survive the heat, the oxygen, and the light that they're exposed to. And they incorporate that fat into your skin, oily layer, into the subcutaneous fat as well, and starts a free radical damage that destroys our skin's health and youthful appearance. But they also cause damage elsewhere in the body. in the brain, and so on. When people have age spots on their skin, those age spots are indicators that they accumulate something called lipofuscin, which is a chemical debris, waste material, as a result of free radical damage in the skin. And it's not just to be blaming the sun. It's from everything else that they're doing. That would end up also causing lipofuscin accumulation in the brain. Lipofuscin. F-U-S-C-I-N. The lipo is easy, right? So you can search for it if you want. Lipofuscin is formed in age spots on the skin, while you also form lipofuscin areas or accumulation in the brain. And that's the first sign of dementia. Senile dementia or Alzheimer's disease, if you allow it to accumulate more and more. So the skin is a vital organ that gives you hints about what's happening inside your body. And it's telling you that you need to do something. Take action. Make a difference. Now, yes, there are methods to eliminate those age spots and you will look beautiful again. But you are not eliminating it from the brain. You still need to take care of the free radical damage inside your brain by changing your diet, eliminating all those rancid fats, avoiding excessive amount of nitric oxide from food or from other protein sources that are too high and dense, because all that nitrogen can accelerate free radical damage. Too much protein is a problem today. It's been since the last 100 years, excessive amount of protein, and insufficient intake of antioxidants and phytonutrients that function as antioxidants. So those are really important. We don't have enough healthy mitochondrial output in the brain. We need to have nutrients that activate mitochondrial function, including sun exposure, which is very important for mitochondrial function all over the body, thanks to the infrared component and the red light of the solar spectrum, which activates the mitochondria. That is why red laser treatments are so good for hair growth. If you lost a lot of hair prematurely, or if your hair becomes dry and unhealthy, relatively speaking, and let's assume that it's not for genetic reasons in many cases, then it's an indication that your hair follicle was not able to manufacture enough energy because of mitochondrial dysfunction. If you are more exposed to the sun, and if you go to indigenous people who live in tropical or semi-tropical areas, they rarely lose their hair. But when they move to the city, suddenly they start getting bald. They don't get enough sun, but they also get a lot of toxic food, packaged food, not enough antioxidants, more pollution, etc. It's a combination of many things. But it's an indicator that something is going on. And if you get that, I did some research to find what is the best laser device that would get you the highest density of laser diodes per square inch, and that will also be travel worthy or easy to travel with, and that also has those spokes as in a comb, with the intent to split the hairs apart to give room for the infrared to hit the scalp. If you use a good one like that, then just a few minutes every other day will trigger hair growth where the hair has become almost flimsy, like Lanugo chick hair, after it's been damaged for such a long time that you don't think you have it, but it's still there. It just needs to be reinforced again. The mitochondria have to be reactivated. Infrared does that, but you get it also from the sun. Now, what about the full spectrum of the sun? It's crucial for our health because it penetrates the skin and it creates an environment that is resistant to microbes. The sun is an antiseptic. The full white light of the sun, the full spectrum, creates all those natural anti-inflammatory agents and immune messengers that change our immune function and eliminate the risk of autoimmune disease or dramatically reduce the chance of allergy, asthma, atopic dermatitis, and various autoimmune diseases through the skin. It penetrates and it creates things. And I don't have to tell you how, by putting the sheets outdoors, you sterilize the sheets, thanks to the sun. You don't need to even use too much soap. And you don't need to use a dryer. It's a really amazing thing that should not be amazing, because it should be taken for granted since we always have the sun. We just refuse to take advantage of it in the last 100 years, and look what happened as a result. We have now an epidemic of melanoma. In the days when people burnt in the sun, they had no melanoma. Now, guess what percentage increase we have in melanoma since the advent of the sun protection industry? What's the increase? 3,000%. It used to be 1 out of 1,500 people getting melanoma. Now it's 1 out of 50. Exactly parallel to the increase in the use.
Doesn't it happen where the sun never hits?
Yeah, with melanoma especially, it's much more in areas of the body where there is no sun exposure. That's why it's so rare to have melanoma on the face, because the face is in the sun, even in people who cover up. So the face almost never has melanoma. But in women, 50% of melanomas happen between the hip and the knee, where there's never sun. And many other melanomas occur in the bottom of the feet, between the toes, behind the knees, on the scalp, under the hair, areas that are not exposed to the sun. This tells us that what we are being told by the sun protection industry is a lie designed to scare us away from the natural sun. And the result is that we need more doctors, because we end up suffering from all those diseases. So doctors' advice creates needs for more doctors. And there are very clever people in our history of medicine who have repeatedly said the adage, where there is sun exposure, there are no doctors. They're not necessary in most cases. But stay out of the sun like they tell you to, and you are sure to need them sooner or later.
The sun prevents doctors.
Sun prevents doctor, exactly. The disease called doctors is preventable. You just need some sun. You just, if you are reasonable, you will not burn in it. But even those who are burnt, if you look at the scientific studies, and there were many done, with people who were exposed to the sun a lot as kids, how do we know that they were exposed? Because in questionnaire we asked, how many times did you get burnt? So people who got burnt between 5 and 10 times, it's not that they regularly burnt, but sometimes they would burn if they remember 5 times the entire childhood. It is basically an indicator for the fact that they were in the sun a lot more than those who were burnt only once. And those who were in the sun a lot more, which also resulted in a few burns, which are not recommended, but they got burned, never mind, they had 50% less breast cancer. They had more than 50% reduction in colorectal cancer and many other types of cancer. To see the actual science, I highly recommend that you contact my assistant to get a really, really discounted version of the book, Embrace the Sun. which is coming up in a couple of weeks. It will have 1,200 scientific references that support everything I tell you. And every doctor you ever see needs to read that book so that they stop lying to their patients. Especially your skin doctors, but not only, because nowadays everybody believes the specialists. It's almost as if we need to have specialists so that all the other doctors will refer to them, by believing that they know more about their specialty. Unfortunately, the skin specialists have created an aura of authority around the issue of skin and sun exposure to the point that all the other doctors refer people to their opinion and tell their patients also to stay out of the sun. And because the sun protects us from many internal diseases, the internists benefit too. The gastroenterologists benefit as well. The psychiatrists benefits too. The family practitioners, the pediatrician, etc., etc. Everybody benefits. So they all need to see that book. Now, I have written in that book the preface and the appendix. That appendix can be standalone article. If you want that article, email my assistant and she'll send you that article for free. The article about the practical way to give our body the sun that it is so deeply craving because of the severe deficiency we suffer in sun exposure. It's practical, and it is basically called sun replacement therapy, SRT. Sun replacement therapy is designed for people who live north of the 35th parallel. They have too many months with no sun. Or for people who live in the tropics but are always in the shade or under clouds, or are working indoors, or are covering up for modesty reasons, etc. All those people who cannot be in the sun for whatever reason, at least half an hour during high noon. And it could be even more than that after you build up a protective, healthy tan. Then you can stay longer. But half an hour is perfect. It prevents all types of skin cancer, including carcinoma, which is associated with sun exposure. Who gets carcinoma? Farmers. People who are outdoors all the time for whatever reason, sailors. But those people never get melanoma. Never. They're protected from it because they've been in the sun so much that it was about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, there was a doctor who realized that people with carcinoma, that non-lethal cancer that never kills anybody, that never invades, that shouldn't even be called a cancer, called carcinoma of the skin. It could either be BCC or SCC, basal cell carcinoma, or squamous cell carcinoma. Those are now considered by academicians, not by the doctors in the front who's seeing patients, but the academicians, the professors, the researchers are saying that carcinoma of the skin should not even be called a cancer, because it doesn't behave like one. It doesn't invade, it doesn't metastasize, it doesn't kill anyone. So we should not even call it a cancer. But some doctors benefit from scaring you with the word cancer to justify highly invasive, scarring, disfiguring surgeries. And that's why they have to tell you this is cancer. And immediately your fear of the word cancer will force you to start getting all types of surgeries and procedures that are dangerous for you, like biopsy. You think, wow, I have a lesion that is risky looking, I must have a biopsy. You don't. You don't have to have it. There are other ways. The biopsy itself, if it is a cancer, according to 150 scientific articles that I have read, all coming from Asia and from Europe, but not from the US, surprisingly, or not, showing that biopsies can spread cancer very easily. And it's just a matter of how good your immune system is to stop that metastasis. But do you really need to take that chance, that risk? There are other ways. Especially not with a carcinoma, which would never kill you unless you do a biopsy. If it is an invasive type, like SCC can be invasive in rare occasions. Mostly when you do a biopsy of SCC, but you don't know in advance. If you're not sure that it is an SCC or a BCC, by doing a biopsy, getting the result and seeing that it was an SCC is not a good day in your life because you've taken a big risk. It happened to be an SCC which has been interfered with, interrupted through the needle or the knife or the spoon or whatever it is that they use to take a piece of it out. That increases the risk and it only pushes it deeper. This is scientific information. I'm not making it up. If you want some scientific references to that effect, send an email to my assistant. The same assistant that will also send you the book, if you want that book, Embrace the Sun, with all the scientific references. And we'll also send you the article about sun replacement therapy if you don't want to buy the book, because that article is free. Okay? So that email, which I've seen already a few hands going up, is clinic@ecopolitan.com. And you have it now, clinic@ecopolitan. Politan, just like ecological metropolitan, ecopolitan.com. So clinic@ecopolitan.com, you'll get all the information. Don't ask me for that email again today, all right? You got it now clearly? So, very important to know that with those carcinomas of the skin, they are protected against when you are in the sun without burning and without staying too much. Those sailors and those farmers who stayed in the sun for hours and hours every day unprotected developed sometimes BCC, most of the time, and rarely SCC, on their nose, on their forehead, on their hand. Those are the places that are very common. Only in people who have been excessively in the sun without protecting themselves through a healthier diet or listening to their skin when they had to get out of the sun, because their vocation required of them to stay out all the time. Those people never got melanomas. So some doctors 120 plus years ago hypothesized that you just need to be suffering from carcinoma in order to avoid melanoma, which was proven to be only partially correct, because you don't need to have carcinoma to prevent melanoma. You just need to be in the sun to prevent melanoma. And that was what's common to those people. They were burnt a lot, they had carcinoma. The carcinoma was just a marker indicating that they were in the sun a lot. And as a result of being in the sun a lot, they avoided melanoma, not as a result of the carcinoma. You understand? That doctor didn't understand that at that time. It took about 10 or 20 years before other doctors, researchers, indicated that no, it's not the carcinoma that prevents melanoma, it's a sun exposure that prevents melanoma. Just don't burn and you'll be okay. And even if you burnt a few times, you're not going to suddenly become a sailor or a farmer who's always outdoors, exaggerating and exceeding the skin's capacity of self-regulation and control. Melanoma, in close to 80% of the cases, forms where there is no sun exposure. And if you go to a skin doctor, he or she will check you up for what? For nevi, right? Looking for dark spots. Those are called nevi. A nevus is a dark spot, like a mole. It could be flat or it could be protruding from the skin. Just like carcinomas, they indicate that there was some pathology in the skin. too much free radical damage, insufficient mitochondrial output, too much rancid fat, and so on. Everything we've discussed. Insufficient protection of skin health. Not enough healthy nutrients. Melanoma is considered a condition that develops in nevi, in dark spot. And that's why when you have a dark spot, you go to a skin doctor, he or she will check you and measure it and look with some magnifying glass and appear to be investigating it in a scientific manner, which is really a ploy because they don't see what's happening underneath. They only see the surface. So they use the typical acronym, the ABCDE, right? The asymmetry, border, color, diameter, and evolution of each lesion to determine more or less if it's suspicious. And if it is, they would then recommend a biopsy, which increases the risk. If indeed it was a cancer, God forbid, but if it is not a cancer yet, but atypical cells or abnormal cells, by introducing more inflammation to the lesion as a result of the biopsy, even if the biopsy comes negative, there is an increased chance that the inflammation would only accelerate the problem and the scar tissue and the damage to the circulation of the lymphatics. So it increases the chance of developing cancer in the future in that specific lesion, which normally will come somewhat atypical. The pathologist would satisfy the need of the skin doctor to find some palliative things, so they overdiagnose usually because they cover their behind that way. And many times people get misdiagnosed excessively, which then justifies the follow-up surgery, and basically the whole system benefits from this running around the carousel of going doctor to doctor if you have nothing better to do in your life but sitting in waiting, long waiting list time after time and going through horrific surgeries and disfigurement just out of the fear of God that was put into it. There's a lot of scientific research by dermatologists today, mostly outside of the US, but those who are in the US are usually in the academia, who are actually admitting that there is an excessive diagnosis of skin cancer today, which is not really skin cancer. And people are getting scared into unnecessary procedure. So it's better to take a less invasive approach. If you have a layer that appears like it could one day become something, just get rid of it. Just take that layer out, dry it, and take it out. It's very easy to do with no surgery. And once you have no dark spot, theoretically you will not have a melanoma because melanoma starts from dark spots, right? Well, even that is not necessarily true. It's a lie that we've been told. According to the scientific research of recent, it's been found that only 20% of melanomas actually start in nevi. So you're wasting your time going to get checked because they're going to look for nevi, which account only for 20% of the melanomas. What happens to the other 80%? What a waste of time. The other 80% are up to you to diagnose because the skin doctor will not diagnose them because they are not yet considered nevi. First, you have to identify it as a nevus before you will have then the statistical chance of that nevus evolving into a melanoma. But if you fail to identify other lesions as nevi, you will never check them until it's too late. Until suddenly, wow, you have a melanoma, but there was no nevus there. Or was there something else there? You think that it started suddenly out of nowhere? It's impossible that you'll have suddenly a melanoma and just a second before there was nothing. Would you agree with that? It's impossible. So what happened to those 80% of the melanomas? Did they just manifest, solidify out of thin air?
Are you asking?
It's all rhetorical. I'm a rhetorical kind of a person.
Oh, could I ask a question?
Only if it's rhetorical.
Well, isn't this really from the liver?
No. Oh, I mean, everything is from the
dark
liver.
spots on the skin,
Oh, wait a minute.
toxicity.
We holistic people, we have some mantras. It's always toxicity, liver, and stress.
Well, they call it liver spots.
Always. Yeah, but they call it's already a misnomer. Who are they? Most people don't diagnose themselves very accurately, and liver spots are not necessarily liver spots. Maybe they're age spots. Maybe they're
Is that the
sunspots.
same thing?
No, not necessarily. A lot of people get mixed up between them. And you can always blame the liver, because the liver is basically creating so many hundreds of nutrients for the body, and is doing so many things that, but I'm not asking a question that is so generalized. I'm asking specifically to the skin. Are those 80% coming out of nowhere? I mean, the liver could be utilized both for the 20 and the 80, so it's kind of irrelevant to the differentiation between the two. You understand, right? When we differentiate, then the liver is out of the picture. What's in the picture is what's happening to the skin. Where are those 80% coming from? And the answer is, they do appear as tiny dark dots on the skin sometimes. Tiny, tiny dark spots, like specks, or like a pen mark. And they're so small that they're ignored. And they're not, therefore, identified as a nevus to be looked at later on. So they keep telling you to come back every 6 months, and they make money every visit, doing nothing, just looking at you. And what are they looking at? The large ones. The large ones are rarely ever becoming melanomas. The studies have shown that it's the small ones, not the large ones, that are far more dangerous because they grow in, they are deep, they have roots. They didn't grow sideways, they grew inwards. You're looking at me like I fell out of the sky.
No, because I'm taking it. What you're
All right,
saying.
it all sounds so suspiciously wrong because you've been brainwashed on the opposite, but that's why you need to read the research. Read the science for yourself, okay? Don't listen to doctors who don't have time to read science, who are orthodox medical doctors. What does it mean, orthodox? It means tradition. Orthodox means I follow. I don't learn, I follow what I was told. I don't have time to think about it because I believe. Orthodoxy is based on belief. It's religion. It's good for religion. Right? Orthodoxy is great if you are a religious person. It's doing you a lot of good. But in medicine, it should not be based on belief. Every doctor who tells you to stay out of the sun believes it. But it's not scientific. Every skin doctor who tells you that a nevus is the source always of a melanoma believes this. He or she does not want to know that they are missing 80% and that we are allowing this epidemic of melanoma to kill more people just because of a simple failure in recognizing the process of development of the melanoma, which starts as a tiny speck. Most of the skin contains melanocytic cells, so it doesn't have to be concentrated in the areas that are already dark. They still make up in total the smallest amount of the skin by comparison to the areas that don't have nevi on them. So it's going to be mostly the general skin that will develop the melanoma. You just have to identify those dark, tiny specks when they start appearing. At that phase, they are not melanomas. They will not be melanomas if you recognize them because you just peel them off. And once they're not there and there's just whiteness, no roots, no darkness, there will be never anything there that will develop to the next stage, which will finally get nicknamed nevus. And then start meriting that every 6 months checkup, until suddenly something looks so suspicious, so dangerous and aggravated that you can justify doing biopsies or surgeries or other things. But at that time, you're at risk of perhaps metastasis and even death. Because you waited so long through those regular checkups instead of identify those tiny, tiny dark specks that occur.
Say dark.
Dark.
Color.
Color, dark brown or black, or very,
Dark brown.
dark brown or brown, but very small. That's how they start.
What about those red types?
Red are not usually going to end up as melanomas. Those are hemangiomas or senile hemangiomas. Those are accumulation of damage to the circulation because of eating foods rich in AGEs, foods rich in acrylamide, foods rich in rancid fat, insufficient antioxidant in the arteries. Having inflammation in the arteries because of microbes as well, insufficient immune response to microbes, or excessive immune response as in arteritis from autoimmune disease, that is also a result of environmental and nutritional components. Those would lead to damage of whatever tissue is susceptible. If you have ALS, it's because the brain is susceptible, or the central nervous system is susceptible. But if it is your blood vessels that are susceptible, you end up with senile hemangiomas to start with, all those red little dots. They can also easily be removed and your skin can look nice again without them, but you still have them inside your body, like in your liver or your bones or elsewhere, and it's a wake-up call to start living a healthier lifestyle to slow down the production of those red spots. But we were talking about the brown, tiny, black ones that are melanoma related because that's more important for survival, because melanoma is a terrible cancer to have. So you can easily eliminate the risk for it. I'm not even saying that you're preventing it, You're not even preventing it, you're eliminating the risk of ever having a nevus to check up in a clinical setting, because if they're gone, if you don't have those tiny dark spots, there will be nothing to ever check up on. There will be nothing for the skin doctor to even look at and say, you need to come back in 6 months so that I can keep doing nothing for a long time. We're getting really highly paid for that nothing. Of just looking at you and doing nothing and telling you to come back. Okay? So yeah, that's a problem with over-specialization in medicine today. And now there are some really good skin doctors who do research and actually are saying the opposite of what the other skin doctors are telling you in their clinics. And when you read what they are saying, and it's all in that book, Embrace the Sun. When you read it in the book, you'll see, wow, there are some really good dermatologists out there. Most of them do research, they write books, they continuously act as prophets against their own profession. Many of them are castigated, many of them are put down for, but some of them are so high up, professors of dermatology in Harvard and so on, nobody can touch them. They don't see patients on a day-to-day basis, and they write articles admonishing their own colleagues. Silence of the land. The colleagues are ignoring it and continuing business as usual. And if you look at the magazines, the articles, all the advertisements, it seems like the American Academy of Dermatology and the Melanoma Foundation, the IMF International Melanoma Foundation, that they would actually be non-profit organizations that would care about the population health. That those organizations get hundreds of thousands and millions even of dollars from the SPF industry, which is also the drug industry. And they use that money to pretend like their public service announcements are that instead of what they truly are, advertisements for the SPF industry. This has been documented and even exposed in the media. But people forget so quickly because they listen to their doctors who brainwash them again and again. It comes from here and goes out there, say, oh yeah, everything is corrupt, everything is conspiracy, and then they go to the doctor and they forget. And they believe as if they never saw anything in their life, as if they're still babes in the wood, as if they were just born yesterday. They ignore their own knowledge and trust. Why? Because I'm in front of a person, and that person is an expert, a specialist, and he must know more than I do. I trust him blindly. This person has been studying from the American Academy of Dermatology that is collecting all that money from the SPF industry. How can you trust, even if he or she is a really nice person and very knowledgeable at doing biopsies, very capable at looking at the ABCDEs and telling you if a nevus has changed a little bit? Well, if they fail the science, they have no excuse, any more than somebody who failed to see the stop sign and still gets, a fine by the police. Well, I'm sorry, I just didn't see it. It's the same thing. Why are doctors getting away with it when they just don't see the research? They should not get away with that, but they do all the time because they created something called the standard of care, which I often call it the standard of scare. And that's how they can justify it. And they can hide behind the hypocritical oath in the same manner. It's not the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. It's the hypocritical oath because they first do harm in most cases. How do you avoid harm? By identifying patterns. This is good in mathematics, in physics, in every situation. Even intuition is really the identification of patterns. If you identify them and use science to support the recognition of those patterns, the whole fear of melanoma ceases to exist. Because you can address the 80% as well as the 20% very easily, long before they become a risk, long before they cause any potential detriment. There's absolutely no reason why people should still have melanomas today. And if they have carcinomas, no big deal. It's not a real cancer. Very few people die from carcinoma of the skin. And those who do die probably died as a result of the biopsy, which spread or metastasized their SCC. It's rare, but I've seen already 3 or 4 cases like that. People who died from SCC after they presented me with their victorious biopsy report stating that they had SCC. They felt so proud that they knew what they had. They didn't realize that in the process of finding out, they may have created a verdict or a sentence that is not necessarily what they wished for or even dreamed of. And most people die from SCC if they are under medical care for organ transplant avoidance of rejection. So the anti-rejection drugs destroy the immune system to such an extent that an SCC can kill a person. Those are the people who died from SCC. So if you're not one of those 2 types, you will not die from carcinoma of the skin. There's no reason for fear. It can easily be peeled off, and it's not deep. There's no reason to do a deep surgery, multiple cutting and stitching and so on. Unnecessary. And in many cases, it comes back exactly at the seam where you did the stitching. So what's the point? Just peel it off. It's so easy. Regardless. I mean, it's not a real cancer, according to the recent opinion leaders among dermatologists. It can just be on you forever and never kill you. Just disfigure you a little bit, so peel it off. And then you don't even have the disfigurement of the surgery. It's that simple. So cancer of the skin can be a thing of the past if you just know a little bit what to look for and identify it and eliminate it with, just a tiny drop of a liquid acidic compound that just dries things and they fall off. And there have been scientific studies about the efficacy of this liquid compound for over 75 years. But it doesn't make money for people who are looking for sophisticated looking apparati. If you have a big laser machine, it's very impressive. You can charge a lot from the insurance company. But if you are doing with some liquid that's been around from 85 years ago or even longer, and you just apply it with a Q-tip or with a toothpick, obviously it's not that impressive. It doesn't show the progress that we made in medicine. In order to show progress, we have to have ever-increasing technologies, breakthroughs, sophistication, expensive looking gadgets. Then we can justify the ever-escalating inflation in medicine today, which is basically driving society entirely into bankruptcy. Bankruptcy today is probably going to be first and foremost for medicine. Because no matter what recession we may suffer from, it never touches medicine. Medicine always keeps remaining inflationary. It might be slowing down a little bit, right? So instead of going like that, it might slow down to here. But then it goes right back to here. And we are all footing the bill in a terrible way. Don't think, oh, my insurance will cover it. Look at how much you're paying for insurance nowadays. And look at co-pays, how horrible those are. There's no getting out of it. I have patients who are telling me, well, I went to the plastic surgeon and did all skin tags, and I have 7 of them. And he weren't, it's not covered by my insurance, so I have to pay $750 for each one. Because you have to go to a hospital, they have to an outpatient clinic, they have to prepare you, they have to put, rent a special room in a hospital. It's all very expensive. They have to get their income, right? It ends up $750 per lesion that can easily be removed, all 7 of them in 5 minutes for, $300, $200, something that everybody can afford themselves, instead of saying, well, I'm going to hope my insurance covers it. This is the ridiculous situation we arrived at. So, the skin also has the living aspect of it. The dermis that has living cells. And the epidermis also has living cells. And underneath that, we also have the elastic area, the parts with collagen and elastin, and both of them are layers that are just as important to maintaining the integrity and health of the skin and its ability to manufacture all those photo products when it's exposed to the photonutrients from the sun. So, how do you keep the skin hydrated? Besides treating your stratum corneum well and preventing this transepidermal water loss, how do we treat the skin itself, the living cells of the skin? By giving them the nutrients they need. And some of those nutrients are coming from the sea. In nature, we would be eating a lot of seaweed. Today, most people don't. They might put some kelp flakes or dulse flakes as a garnish, but that's minuscule amount. In nature, you would go to the beach and just pick huge amount of kelp that has been washed into the sand, and you can just eat it straight from the sea. It's salty, it's crunchy, it's raw, it's unprocessed, it's easy to eat in large quantities and get some satisfaction, fiber, and calories. But it's very rich in mucopolysaccharides, especially sulfated mucopolysaccharides, which are nutrients that we don't get enough today because there aren't that many. You can eat the inside of aloe vera, it does have some. Those mucilaginous plants that could be either cacti, thick leaves, slimy things, they contain some mucopolysaccharides, like okra when you cook it, or like buckwheat when you soak it. They don't always have the sulfur, the sulfated component, which is unfortunate because that's what we need most, sulfur. And we are deficient in that, and that's another reason why our skin, hair, and nails are not as healthy as they used to be. People who take sulfur-rich foods, whether it's garlic or onion or the black Himalayan sulfur-rich salt, which if you want to get the cleanest And the purest form of it, which is also delicious, and it's the highest source of sulfur of all food. It's 0.5% by volume, which is really high of sulfur. You can either ask Joey about it, or you can email Angie about it, and you can get information on how to obtain it. That's all. You can have it shipped to your home, or you can buy it. Do you have some here? Okay, you can buy it right here and save the shipping cost. This Himalayan black salt also supports our orphanages and schools and mothers groups and other centers in Nepal. But it's the healthiest salt for you to eat, because every time you eat it, you get sulfur. Good for your skin, good for your hair and nails. People who don't do that oftentimes have fragile, brittle nails, and only when they start eating that salt, they report that they finally can grow their nails longer because they're strong enough to grow longer. And they feel the difference in their hair as well. Of course, you can take supplements that give you all the nutrients known to help the skin, hair, and nail. There's such a product called Hair Skin Nails, in fact, surprisingly, right? Hair Skin Nails. Very good products for people who want to just assure their skin that it's getting enough nutrients so it can do its job. And it's a good product, and I admit, sometimes because of my travel schedule and my inconsistent time in the sun, especially when I have long clinic days, and because of when I travel, I don't always get the healthiest types of food. Yes, it's still relatively healthy, but not always as well as I'd like it to be. Then I do take sometimes the hair, skin, nail supplement, because it's important for me to have a healthy skin, since I speak about skin a lot. And people are always looking at my skin and say, well, man, does he practice what he's preaching? Well, I have a little scar here right now because I hit something and so it bled. That's not my normal skin, just so that you know. Generally, I'm happy with my skin. I was not too happy with my hair for a while. It was starting to fall a little bit, and I started using that laser that I was telling you about. I experimented before I started recommending to patients, right? So it made a difference. It really helped, as well as the hair, skin, nail. Plus, you can also do exercise, increasing the circulation by massaging the scalp, by getting the areas from the side, from the temples, closer upward, to increase the circulation in the scalp, which is always very tight, especially in today's stressful environment. When you're under stress, the suboccipital muscles are pulling on the ligamentous sheath at the apex of your head, and your frontalis muscle also gets pulled, and then it tightens to compensate, and people develop tension headaches right here. The same phenomenon that leads to tension headache here is leading to too much tightness in the ligament up here, the gallio-aponeurotica, it's called. That ligaments get taut, and that interfered with the circulation to the hair follicle. And the follicle cannot handle that lack of circulation, lack of nutrients, lack of oxygen, and it starts getting damaged. The hair is not growing healthily as it used to. That lack of circulation, lack of nutrients. I just heard myself.
Yes.
So I hope that I don't sound like that all the time. It's really strange, you know, especially when I'm lecturing. Okay, so by increasing the circulation, and there are many other ways to increase circulation. I have a whole lecture on YouTube dedicated to circulation, and it discusses pulse PMF, pulse electromagnetic field, like the Bemer machine is very good for increasing the volume of blood circulating in the capillaries and in the small arterioles. And of course, exercise can help, and some supplements like ginkgo, and stress reduction activities, and some herbs that are adaptogenic in nature, They reduce the physiological response to stress. If you want some of those supplements, if you're curious about them, you can ask Joy or Angie or send an email that you received before. That's clinic@ecopoison.com, and you can then find out how you can do those things and overall increase the health of your skin and hair and nails. But don't forget to eat your algae. Not microalgae, not microscopic, but the macroscopic, the visible plant that comes from the sea. That will be beneficial. Get more sulfur in your diet and eat more crucifers, which also have some sulfur, but not enough nowadays. And people don't eat them as much as they should because they are fearful that they would affect their thyroid, and that's a whole other discussion, how doctors cause people damage by telling them to avoid healthy foods in order to supposedly reduce the risk for some disease that is very easy to prevent in other ways. But they always select the way that is the least healthy. Telling you to stop eating kale and greens because they put you on a drug to prevent blood clots. So you always have to compromise your health to accommodate a toxic drug. It's kind of illogical. But we fall prey to that because we make the assumption that the drug is the indispensable one and the healthy food is dispensable. We don't need it. It's a drug that's important. But healthy food, who cares? And of course, we only get sicker.
Which drug?
Coumadin.
Oh, yeah.
Warfarin. And people who take them end up at a much higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke. Yes, they are reducing the risk of ischemic stroke, but ischemic stroke doesn't kill anyone. Ischemic stroke simply makes you confused for a while, and most of the time you get out of it, and you can go back to work. But it's the hemorrhages that you get because of the anticoagulant. And because you listen to all those bad advices.
They show that big black and blue marks, and that doesn't even tell them what to do.
Well, yeah.
They still believe in it.
Yeah, belief is a terrible thing when it comes to medicine. Like I said, it's great in religion, but it's bad when you're simply trusting some company who wants to sell you a toxin and does not want you to know how to improve your health naturally, and it's so easy to reduce the viscosity of your blood. Simply by taking vitamin E, for example, and eating garlic and other things, and moving, and being in the sun, and increasing your nitric oxide. Just being in the sun gives you so much nitric oxide that your blood vessels dilate, and you don't have to worry about constriction and clotting and ischemic attack, whether it's in the heart or in the brain. And there are other ways, but that's not the topic for today. So take care of those algae and the sulfur-containing foods that you are missing. Make sure you don't have too much protein, because the free radical damage from the excess nitrogen compound will damage the proteins in your skin whose job it is to hold on to water. Those proteins retain the moisture. When you are a baby or a child, you should have 70, 75% even of moisture in your living epidermis, not the fatty layer. But as we grow older, when I measure people's skin, I see it's diminishing to 50%, 40%, even 30% moisture, even in 30-year-olds. Sometimes 30-year-olds have worse condition than a 70, 75-year-old, because age does not make a difference as much as how you treat your body. If you treat your skin well, and you avoid the excess protein, and I measured it, I tested it on myself. I took protein in high amounts for 1 week, and my moisture went down in the living epidermis. It's not a good scientific test because I'm only one person, but it was the only change I made in that week. Well, I took some vegan protein powders and protein bars that were all nice and plant-based, but it was enough to cause damage. Maybe if I ate animal protein, it would have been even worse, but I don't know.
There's a lot of salt in those things, in those vegan powders.
No, not so much. In those, the one that I took do not have much salt. I took really good quality medical food powder. Now, you can easily get too much protein if you do them too much. But if you do them in lieu of eating a meal because you're in a hurry, then you won't be excessive. Unfortunately, athletes and other people who are, bodybuilders and so on, they go up to 200 grams a day of protein. And if they're vegan, they'll be proud that they're building muscles on veganism. But what are they doing? They're poisoning themselves with plant-based protein. Too much. 200 grams? It's crazy. Absolutely unnecessary. So when I took more protein as an experiment for 1 week, my moisture level was diminished. And then I went back to a small level, moderate to low level of protein by eating as I naturally do, and avoiding the dense protein foods. Everything went back to normal. My moisture level increased in the living epidermis, and which means that my skin was healthier and more capable of doing its job, making all those nutrients for me. So the same is true, by the way, from the elasticity perspective. The deeper layer of the skin contains the elastin and collagen. If you have enough nutrients to support that, especially foods rich in vitamin C, and if you don't have enough vitamin C, most of us don't because we buy foods from the supermarket, so it's already lost much of its vitamin C content, I recommend to all my patients to use a high-quality vitamin C powder that comes together with the cofactors you would have in nature. So it doesn't come as vitamin C alone. It comes with many other antioxidants that support the recycling of vitamin C and sustain it in our body much longer than the normal half-life of 4 hours. So it stays much longer. It does more of the antioxidant work and support of the immune system. So this is very important because vitamin C is a crucial precursor to collagen buildup. And there are certain amino acids that can also help that, but that I would only recommend for people who truly have lost their elasticity in the skin. Besides vitamin C, there are other nutrients and antioxidants like alpha-lipoic acid. There are nutrients like CoQ10, which help the mitochondrial output. And there is a very important nutrient called glutathione, which I'm sure most of you have heard. There's recently been a new, relatively new development of a glutathione that is more easily absorbed as glutathione instead of breaking down into its amino acid constituents. So you can absorb it as glutathione, and it's been shown to increase glutathione accessibility to the cells. And that makes a big difference in both detoxification and antioxidant function. For names and so forth, again, ask Joy or send an email. Okay, so this is how the skin teaches us about our health, and the hair and nails as well. And we have many ways today that I mentioned on how to protect and how to improve the vitality and health of the skin, but even more importantly, what not to do that we do on a regular basis to damage ourselves. Now, if you have dry skin because you live indoors in a very hot environment while it's cold outside, you're going to be too dry. If you fly a lot of airplanes, which are drier than the Sahara Desert, you will have some problem with the skin saying, I'm sorry, I can't hold, my stratum corneum cannot hold against this severe dryness. I'm going to let some of my moisture go out. That type of damage to an over-dehydrating skin, similar to the skin that is exposed to the high heat of a shower and chlorine and fluoride and other toxins in the water, that kind of a damage can be reduced or prevented by using not oils, but moisturizing creams that are emulsions of natural agents combined with aloe. If you use organic, natural aloe juice, the hand-filleted, non-toxic type that's fresh, and you combine it with natural oils from plants that have important antioxidant capability, including natural vitamin A from plant sources and natural vitamin C from plant sources that can easily get incorporated into that emulsion, then it sits on top of the skin instead of incorporating into the oil of the skin. The natural oily layer sustains itself, and you protect it from the outside, preventing the dehydration. So in places like New York or northern latitude, where you heat up the indoors significantly, it might be necessary. Also, if you use air conditioning too much in the summer, that also takes a lot of moisture out of the air. That's why the tropics are so good when you're outside, because even though it's warm and moist and muggy, it will protect your skin. It's good for you. You just have to get used to it. Plus, get out in the sun. Enjoy that as well. You'll get all the benefits. Plus, eating more of the natural antioxidants foods like blueberries, other berries, currants, all those colorful vegetables and the dark greens of all types. So many types in the market. These are the things that you can do to keep everything protected, and then you don't even need to put too many of those emulsions on your skin. And if you're looking for a high quality one that was supposed to already arrive at our office, that is the Ecopolitan creation of aloe vera combined. It can do the job, but even that you don't need most of the time if you live a healthy lifestyle. I put it on my face only when I go on a long flight. Generally, I don't bother. But if I'm in a hot place and it's cold outside, I might put it on just before I go to sleep, just to protect myself from several hours of excessive dehydration resulting from an unnatural environment. So sometimes we need to compensate for an artificial environment that we humans have created by doing stuff that might not appear very natural. But even then, it needs to at least adhere to natural principles to protect the skin and not to make things worse. Like so many products out there containing so many toxic agents and cheap agents that make a good profit margin for somebody at the expense of your skin and your body too, because some of them even put in there some SPF factors without you knowing, supposedly to protect you, but it doesn't. It only makes your skin fail to manufacture its crucial photo products coming from the sun. I'll just give you one example of how the skin makes a huge impact on your immune system. And that is an example that has to do with the antigen-presenting cells of the skin. They're called dendritic cells. And they are in charge of recognizing abnormality in the environment outside the skin. If some toxic material or an infectious agent, pollution, or other allergenic substances are touching the skin, how does the immune system know to react? Because these cells are presenting the information they received from the surface, because they sent little tentacles all the way to the outside of the skin. And then they mobilize themselves with that information and bring themselves into the lymphatic system that drains the skin. And they can mobilize themselves all the way to the lymph nodes, where there is a concentration of T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes and other immune cells. And they tell them, here is the information from the outside. Start acting up. And suddenly, You have a rash, eczema, dermatitis, and it's a good thing because it shows you that there is a problem. It's on the surface of the body where you need the immune system to alert you to an incoming offensive agent, whether it's a microbe, a toxin, an allergen. If you don't address that problem at that point, it will internalize deeper and deeper because the immune system failed to address it on the surface. So it's like bringing the war into town instead of at the border, where the civilians and the critical component of your country are being threatened. Instead, it's better to keep the war isolated to the boundaries, the border of the country. But when you go to a doctor who gives you a cream with steroids that suppress that inflammatory response, that's what will happen. You'll internalize the disease and you'll start having inner problems like autoimmune diseases that are more critical, allergic responses that are far more systemic, instead of just having a skin issue. When there is a skin issue, it is a representative of what's coming for the rest of your body, and you need to listen to it and find out the cause instead of suppressing. Unfortunately, people treat the skin as nothing more than an agent of beauty, and therefore they want to suppress everything as long as you don't see the acne. Acne is a systemic problem. As long as you don't see the eczema is a systemic problem. But they ignore it. They go to a skin specialist who gives them some kind of a steroidal cream that suppresses all the immune system activity, creating many new problems, including risk of cancer. So it's really important to listen to your skin and respect it as an agent giving you information that can save you from more critical problems later. You see that in children who used to have asthma attacks a lot, but then they grew out of it suddenly. You heard of those? They had severe allergic reaction, but suddenly they were fine. By the time they hit age 12 or 13, but nothing was done to address the cause of their problem. So suddenly, they develop other conditions like autoimmune diseases that are far more severe, and it could take a few more years, but during those years, people are blessing themselves for their child no longer having asthma or no longer having atopic dermatitis. It's unfortunate that they ignored the opportunity to address the problem back then, instead of just waiting for it to pass by itself, and now it becomes a new disease that is considered chronic or very difficult to cure or eliminate, and especially in the medical profession where those diseases are considered incurable. And that's what people have today because they ignored the skin telling them the story in the first place. Take good care of your skin and feed it phytonutrients. You do that through sun replacement therapy and through the appropriate diet. The sun replacement therapy is basically a constellation of several bulbs that give you the entire spectrum of the sun, including the UV and UVA, UVB, which both are very important, utilized appropriately in the right time of the day, because it also has a little emphasis on the blue light, especially for those people who need to be exposed in the morning to the first sun upon its rise in the east. That is slightly higher on the blue spectrum of the entire spectrum, and that starts your biological clock going. It creates your circadian rhythm of separation between day and night. It increases your serotonin production, so you become cognitively better functioning, more alert, more aware, and ready for the day. You don't need your coffee anymore. An external stimulant, you allow it to happen naturally as nature intended with the sun. And that suppresses the melatonin production, which you only want during the night. So if you take care of the full spectrum of the sun, you get the benefit even in all those long months when you are not exposed to it, and therefore you are deficient, no matter how healthy your diet is. You are highly highly deficient. And you cannot claim to be a healthy individual as long as hundreds of endorphins, nitric oxide, vitamin D, all those cytokines, all those immune agents are all missing because you didn't get the sun that was your inborn, inalienable right to get all your life from the moment you were born. Yes, even children. You were supposed to be in the sun, you're supposed to be sunbathing every day and getting all those amazing benefits. And it's easy to do without burning. So SRT is just a way to replace what you can't have because of your specific circumstances. If you do have sun availability, go out to the sun. It's better than SRT. It's better because nobody can emulate nature 100%. But the replacement therapy gives you all the nutrients, all the phytonutrients. Send an email. Okay? So, SRT will save people's lives because all those cancers, and you can do it, from the convenience of your home, and you can do it in your bathroom for 10 minutes a day. If you have privacy, you can take off all your clothes, expose your body completely, turn yourself into a, what do you call that? Gyro? Shawarma? What do you call that? Start spinning.
Rotisserie chicken.
Rotisserie chicken. Just what I didn't think about. So it's very easy. You just stand and walk like that. Or maybe we can invent things like, those microwave ovens.
Nothing worse.
So you can be without, but just having something for you to stand on that will just rotate you in front of the SRT. Then you get all the benefit. Some of the SRT benefits are directly by hitting on the retina, not just the skin. And that's really important because there are cells in the retina that are not related to image forming in the occipital cortex. They don't make you see a thing, but they activate the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, which is right next to the hypothalamus, so technically within it, and it is basically the boss for our entire circadian rhythm, and it's crucial for making the right hormones in the right balance at the right time of the day. People are always worried about their imbalanced hormones, and they're quick to take hormone treatments and hormones from the outside. They don't know what they're doing. Nobody can emulate the complexity of nature in this regard with hormones. But just by setting your circadian rhythms correctly with the blue light slightly emphasized in the morning and the more red spectrum in the evening, and then the darkness and avoidance of all those unfortunate lights at night that people have with all the blue screens that should be really in the morning, but now you get it at night. That's how we end up with cancer, digestive problems, immune disorders, digestive issues, skin problems, respiratory, neurological, and psychiatric issues, because we disobey the rhythm of nature. SRT is supposed to help us restore some of it, even in our modern life, which unfortunately makes us all deficient. So let's get nourished again in the sun and even out of the sun when we cannot be in it, and not just the diet. Keep your skin healthy, and it will keep you healthy in return. Thank you very much. Questions, yes. Do you want to get the questions on Facebook too? So this entire lecture is on Facebook now?
Yes.
On whose channel is it on?
It's on the Casa stuff. So I'm going to upload it and put it on YouTube too.
Okay.
How do people find it on Facebook? I don't have Facebook, but
Then
Well, I'll do
it
it.
will be on YouTube.
Yeah, there'll be another
Yeah, on
thing.
YouTube it will be a little easier. if we got, if we could put it on my channel, it will have a lot more access to a lot more people.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the links and everything though too. So.
Great. Thank you.